Hey guys, what's going on? It's King What If here, and we're with a banger today. What if Deku had the Omnitrix? Part 9, my longest running series. But this is a redo anyway. But anyway, I wasn't planning on even posting this part, to be honest. I wasn't gonna post this part. I was just gonna, keep quiet. I was actually gonna delete this. I was gonna read. I was gonna stop this what if, but then I listened to it again and I realized how awesome it is. So I just decided to keep it. Yeah. So I decided to keep this part. Anyway, let's continue, okay? So here's what's gonna happen. We we pick off after Midoriya. We pick up after Midoriya and we pick up after what's his name? We pick up after Class 1A had their big fight with Mirio. After that, they all get up and ask Mirio some questions, and Mirio gives the same responses. As they're walking out, Mr. Aizawa says, "Believe it or not, these guys were in your shoes before. So take their advice and listen to them." They would all agree, and Muriel would walk to the dorm. The next day, Muriel would get up as he would go to Mr. as he'd go to meet All Might. While walking out the dorms, one Nedre would say, "Muriel, where are you going? I'm pretty sure your work study's closed today, and we don't have classes." As Muriel would say, "I know, I just need to go talk to somebody." And Tamaki would say, "Okay." As Tamaki would say that, Muriel would leave. Leaving as Muriel would walk over to All Might's room. Muriel would walk to All Might's office or something, and All Might would be like, "Hey Muriel, you wanted to talk to me? Sorry, I went on a super long jog the other day." As Muriel would say, "Yeah. So, you know Zuku Midoriya?" As All Might would say, "Yeah, he's a good kid, super smart." As Muriel would say, "Yeah, I kind of want to introduce him to Sir Night Eye." As All Might would be like, "What? You want to introduce him to Sir?" As Muriel would be like, "Is there a problem with that?" As All Might would say, "No, no problem. Just I feel like Midori could really benefit from that, but I bet Midori and Sir's personality are two different things." And Mario would say that's the only problem. Although, remember what you told me about Sir? You said back in the day he was a big fanboy. He was so big that he forced you to make him your sidekick. And what if, as All Might would be like, "I understand what you're trying to say. That if Midoriya was older, he would have been my sidekick instead of Sir." Mid, uh, Midoriya would, I mean, All Might would say, as All Might would say, "Yes, that's what I'm trying." I mean, Miria would say, "That's what I'm trying to say." As All Might would say, "Look, it is really just the case with their personalities, but I don't know everything. The years have taught me that," he'd say. "So I think you should introduce him to Sir." Meanwhile, while walking, they'd be in the school as they'd be walking to lunch or something. As on the announcements, they would ask Midoriya to come meet with All Might, and Uraraka and Ida would be like, "Whoa, you're meeting up with All Might? So lucky." As Midoriya would say, "Yeah, super lucky." As he'd be wondering what was going on. After wondering what was going on, Midoriya would meet up with All Might, and Mirio. As they would meet up together, Midori would say, "Hello, sir. You called me?" And All Might would say yes. As Mirio would walk in, he'd walk in with like a few waters and give some to Midoriya. As Midori would say, "Thank you." All Might would say, so your class is doing work studies, huh?" And Midori would be like, "Yeah." As All Might would say, "How would you like to do your work study with Sir Night Eye?" Midori would be like, "Wait, Sir Night Eye? You mean your former sidekick?" Midori would be excited, but his face would then change as he'd say, "I would love to, but unfortunately, I have some friends I needed to call about this. So, I'm sorry. I need to check in with some friends first." As All Might would say, "I'm guessing you don't mean your friends like young Ida and Uraka, but I understand. Just give us your answer by tomorrow if you can." As Midori would say, "Okay." Meanwhile, as Midori would say, Midori would say, "Okay." After that night, he would go to sleep, and he would try calling Ben, Gwen, Grandpa Max, and Kevin, but none of their plumber's badges were responding. So Midori would just wonder what was going on. Yeah, so he just wondered what was going on. While wondering what was going on, he would think, maybe I should contact their plumber's badges. Midori would say, "Damn it, I never got their plumber's IDs. I never got their plumber badge ID." As Midori would be like, "I know, it's he has to work." Midori would open up his plumber badge, and however you'd use it. So opening up his plumber's badge, Midoriya would would call Patelito, or Magister Patelito. Yes, the Ripjaw's alien. As he would call Master Patelito, Master Patelito would say, "Master Patelito here, what is it?" And Midoriya would be like, "Hi, Master Patelito, it's me, Midoriya." And he'd be like, "Midoriya?" Be like, "Omnitrix kid?" And Midoriya would be like, "That's me." As he'd say, "Yeah, what do you want?" As Midoriya would ask, he'd explain the whole thing. And he'd ask why Grandpa Max and Ben weren't picking up. Master Patelito would say, "Sorry, kid, they're probably busy. We're dealing with a war here after all." And Midoriya would be like, "What? You're dealing with a war? Oh, how can I help? Like, I can join your agency." As Patelito would say, "Unfortunately, Grandpa Max said no." As Midori would be like, "What does that mean?" Patelito would go as he would grab a letter that Grandpa Max had written to him. As he'd say, "Grandpa Max wrote me this letter for this particular situation." As he'd say, "If Midoriya calls to ask to join the plumber's agency, tell him no." Midoriya would wonder why. But Midoriya would be like, "Can't I just join?" But Toto would say, "We're in the middle of a war, Midoriya, and you have the Omnitrix. If it was up to me, you would have been here yesterday." But for some reason, Grandpa Max got a promotion after. Okay, Ben made it to Junior Magister, and Grandpa Max got a promotion after the whole Vilgax fiasco. So Grandpa Max outweighs me, and Ben is about to be my same rank. So both of them together can basically outdo anybody. They He'd say. "So I don't know why they told you not to, but they said that you can't. But keep your head up, kid. Your chance will come," he'd say, and Midori would be like, "Okay." The next day, after his classes, he would go to Mirio and All Might, and he would say that he would like to join their agencies. I mean, Sir Night Eye's agency. As they say, he loved to join Sir Night Eye's agency. As Midori would say that, all Mirio would say, "Great. So we're gonna figure things out in the next few days." And Midoriya would be like, "Okay." Even though he couldn't join the plumber's agency, just joining All Might's former sidekick agency was still a pleasure, you know. After that, sorry. After that, Midoriya would go to sleep. Meanwhile, while going to sleep, in the middle of the night, something would happen. Overhaul and Twice would show up at an old storage facility or an old warehouse. As they show up at the warehouse, Overhaul would say, "The air's so dirty in here. Aren't you guys sick?" As Twice would say, "Join the club. Everyone inside's been sick for a while. And I'm not talking about sick sick. They're sick in the head." As Overall would say, "And you're not?" Overall, as Twice would say, "Of course I'm not." "Well, yes I am," he'd say with his split personality thing. After he'd say this, they would walk in. Now, this part would be the same. I don't really see why there'd anything be different in his plan. There wouldn't be anything different in this plan. Now, just like normal, Overhaul would kill Mag and he would destroy Compress's arm, I mean. As Shigaraki would rush Overhaul, the quirk destroying bullet would miss. As the quirk destroying bullet would miss, Overhaul would say shield, as Overhaul's lackey would be destroyed. His men would burst through the gate, and as this would happen, webs would start to shoot out, as it would stick each member of the League of Villains to something. A spider monkey would then jump down, as Overhaul would say, "How many times did I tell you? Only reveal yourself on utmost emergencies. We could have handled this." As the spider monkey would say, "I think this was an emergency, human." As he would then de-transform, it would be Albedo. The League of Villains would be shocked. Shigaraki would say, "What are you doing? You're," as Albedo would say, "I'm not the same person as the one you're talking about. You should have known. Look at my hair, my skin. The person you're talking about has different color features. But anyway, I'm not who you're talking about," like Albedo would say. As Albedo would say this, as Albedo would say this, like Shigaraki would say, "What are you?" Albedo would say, "That's not important." As they'd be saying, thanks for revealing yourself." Afterwards, Overhaul would leave, throwing his card, saying if they wanted to work together, then just call him. The next day, Midoriya and Mirio would end up going to meet Sir Night Eye at his agency. They'd walk in as he'd be he'd be tickling Bubble Girl. So as he would be tickling Bubble Girl, they would walk in. As Midori would remember what Mirio said, as he'd have a flashback as they were on the train scene. As Midori would be like, "Do we have to take train? I could just fly us there with one of my transformations," he'd say. "I could just fly us there with one of my transformations," he'd say. And Midori would say, You probably could. But let me tell you something, Midoriya. I have, I didn't, I mean, I never really had to learn this lesson, but I want to pass it on to you. Don't rely on your quirk too much. Relying on your quirk too much can be very dangerous. It can cause some like when you, especially since your quirk doesn't has a time limit. If you run out of time, how are you gonna defend yourself? And that would cause Midoriya to like sort of like have a flashback to a thought he was thinking of as he was thinking of this some time ago after his internship, but he never like really wanted to go on with it, especially since the consequences it would have with his life. But Mirio would snap him out of it. If you want to know what he was talking about, you're gonna have to wait for a later date because I plan on doing that later on. As he'd be thinking about what would be happening, Mirio would snap him out of it. Like Mirio, with something going on with it. Wait, what is it? Oh yeah. He would say, "Did you hear what I said?" You didn't you? But to just sum it up short, you want to get sort of like you, make him laugh. Midoriya would say, "Make him laugh, huh?" As he would be saying this, they would he would decide to do it. They would enter Sir's agency, and Midoriya would fix his hair like All Might and say, "Hello, I'm Izuku Midoriya." As like as they would be like everyone would be shocked. As Sir would say, "Do you really think this is good enough? You're gonna ridicule All Might in front of his sidekick, his former sidekick?" And Midoriya would be scared as Sir and I would stomp to Midoriya. He then opened Midoriya's eyelids, basically explaining how Midoriya's facial features weren't the same. He'd tell Midoriya to get out, as Midoriya would explain why he chose those facial features, referring to one of All Might's past saves. Sir Nadai would say, the Vinegar River save, huh? Afterwards, Sir Nadai would say, "Oh, so you were just testing me to see how much of an All Might fan I was." As he'd say, "Okay." He'd say, "I wasn't doing that," but they just agreed to just be like, just kind of be quiet. Anyway, the salt vinegar save. Afterwards, all my Sonata would say they'd be down at the signing, and Sonata would say, "What do you offer my internship?" And Midoriya would say, I'm very good and my quirk is very adapt and flexible. So I'm pretty sure you could teach me so many things. As you know, and it would really help me a lot to be taught by All Might's former sidekick. As Sir Nadai would stamp not the paper but the desk. As he keeps stamping it, he'd say, "So, you're only joining me because it benefits you. I asked you, what would you bring to my agency?" As he keeps stamping, he tell Mirio and Bubble Girl to get out. As they would get out, he'd say, "Well, you're gonna fight me. If you can take this stamp, you can have it. If you can't, then you can't. If you can, as Mary as Sanai would say, take this stamp and stamp it yourself. You have 3 minutes to take the stamp from me. As your 3 minutes start now." Midori would immediately run to go bear hug Sir Nadai. Sir Nadai would basically move around Midoriya. He'd say that I also mentioned that I can't attack you. I also can't attack you. He'd say. Anyway, hold up.